Right, Assalamu alaikum, and a very warm welcome to everyone. We are back with episode 8 of Chalk and Wrenches. My name is Fatma, and I'm an aviation educator, and I have with me.
Adeeba Ghazal, aircraft maintenance engineer, and we have a surprise for you all as well.
Yes, we're really excited to have somebody on board who shares a common passion of aviation and has a very thorough career in aviation as well. And Deepa, when I read his profile, I could see there is a great transition from one role to another one, which was really interesting for me. And I'm quite sure for everybody who's going to listen to our today's podcast is going to resonate the same. So, without any further delays, I'm going to introduce our guest for today. So, we have on board Francisco Gonzalez. I hope, Francisco, I've pronounced your name correctly. So I'm just going to give a very brief introduction of Francisco first, and then I'm going to give over the mic to him. I'm going to request him to, share a detailed introduction of himself. So Francisco is currently the Aeronautics Faculty Chair, Director of the Aircraft Maintenance Part 147, and Associate Professor of the Aeronautics Department in the Applied Technology Division at the San Bernardino Valley College. So Francisco, a very warm welcome from our side. And good morning from our side, and I hope you are having a very good evening.
Yes, I know we were talking prior to the recording, the discussion. Good evening on my side, Fatima. Good morning, and I think Adiba. Good middle day, right? Like you're in Spain. But no, pleasure to be on your podcast, on your recording. I am thrilled to be here, and I am humbled to be able to speak with you guys in relation to aircraft maintenance.
Right, Francisco. So before we begin anything else, there is one common thing between the all three of us, and that is going to surprise a lot of listeners. So all three of us are actually AMT 40 under 40 recipients. And to begin with, Adeeba was actually awarded this in the year 2019. And I and Francisco actually shared the same year. So it was really exciting for me to, figure this out that all three of us share a very common experience. And from this, I'm actually going to stem my first question. Francisco, what do you think? How important are these awards or recognitions for AMTs in the industry and for anybody who's going to come new, is going to be opting for this industry?
Well, how important are the recognitions? I would say there's like two thoughts. Like there's two thoughts. This okay. I'm sure that when you guys were chosen or awarded, you guys did not want the spotlight. Or at least that was me. Okay. I could care less about having the spotlight, but I do understand that having awareness in our industry is like a big thing, right? Because it's not every day that someone's like, I'm an aircraft mechanic or I'm in aviation or like what have you. So recognition awards like that, I would say highlighting the industry are beneficial not only for the individual, but as the industry as a whole. So I would say just it's it's good because it brings awareness to our aviation industry.
Yeah, Adiba, so we could also connect this to, like Francesco said, that these part of these recognitions are that you get known into the aviation circle or people around you. But the second part, I guess, is more important, that it creates awareness of what AMTs are.
Yes, and my second question, my quick question with Francesco would be, did it make any difference after you received the award, as in the difference between how people were approaching to you, and you might be surprised at people would be willing to talk to you or maybe discuss something different basing basis on these bases. Did
Um,
something change?
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say not like big changes. No, like it's it's funny because I knew Fatima was a 40 under 40 because I read her profile and I was following that same year. Madiba, I wasn't aware of your 40 under 40 recognition in 2019. And now that I know,
Mhm.
now I'm going to look back and read through your biography. But um, I don't say there wasn't a difference. It's just like in my world, like in aviation technical education, like in like the higher academic collegiate like at, um, realm, I guess you would say. Um, I'm in my little silo by myself. Like I'm away from aviation professionals, and it's not until I go to industry like industry events where people are like, "Oh, I recognize you. You're that one person." So I think like a little bit of like
Mhm.
street cred, kind of, but like not really like to me, it's not a big deal, but people recognize me from that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm going to connect this to another important thing that I think is a major issue in the aviation industry, and that is mentoring, Francisco. Having 40 under 40 recipients actually brings out the people who might become good mentors for again for people who are going to be prospect AMTs.
Hmm.
Like we've just begun our conversation, we've said that there's not much awareness about the presence of such a field as such an industry. All that people probably would first think about aviation is that you can become a pilot, or you can actually go into the design industry by becoming an aeronautical engineer or an aerospace engineer. But very few people know about aircraft maintenance itself as an industry. So since you've been into, you're an active, I would say, an individual in the academia. Academia plays a huge role in presenting, mentors for the younger lot. So, what do you have to say about that? How does mentoring work at your side, and how do you think these awards can actually help mentors being recognized by the younger people of easily recognizing that I can connect this to this person, ask the right question, and have the
Yeah.
right guidance?
I think you're absolutely right. I think it builds that like in our industry we have like that tribal knowledge, the whole people that have been doing this for like years, right? Like longer than I have, right? So it's one of those things that I think it connects, being 40 under 40, even though some younger people might think of it like that's old, right? To some old people that's like, oh, that's young. So I think it's like a little like a good mentoring state to be in. Like once you're named 40 under 40, it's expected of you to like, hey, carry on the torch and pass on what you know to the next generation. So I think in that sense, it's like, hey, you highlight these individuals from different fields of aviation, different like subfields, to where they're the subject matter expert within their niche field of aviation, but it kind of makes them be that mentor for the people in that specific part of aviation, whether it's aircraft maintenance or whether it's like an education or some other field, right? It's like they I don't want to say they just become that mentor to the younger generation. Did you have anything
Okay,
else to say,
thank
or,
you.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, thank you, Francisco, for your detailed answer. So I would like to ask you, how was the transition since you are in academic right now and you have a background of being in Air Force and then you transitioned into the commercial. How
yeah,
easy was it? Are there any programs in America, or just tell us
yes,
about
yes,
yourself and help us walk through it.
yeah. So just to give you guys like a very brief like bio like of me, so when I first started doing, well, first of all, when I was younger, like I did not like I didn't even know about the field of aviation. Like I knew there was airplanes, but I like many of people in aviation, they want to become astronauts when they get older, right? Like that was me in like grade school. But growing up in my economic situation with my upbringing with my family, aviation was not part of like their scope, their field of knowledge. Like in fact, culturally in like my culture, it's like, hey, you're expected to work and that's it, like not go to school, right? And so it kind I was I think I just graduated high school. I was in and out of college at the time, like young. I must have been like 19, 20. But I signed up for the military as like as that as like a last resort. And so when I signed up, they were like, "Hey, you scored high enough to be a helicopter aircraft mechanic." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Send me away." Right? So you'd be shocked, right, to find out that when I became well, I wasn't in the Air Force, I was in the Marine Corps. It's like slightly in America, it's slightly different. It's like you're in the military, but you're in like in different like branches of the military, right? Um, but in any case, that's where I learned aircraft maintenance. And I just did a podcast a while ago where I was telling him like, you'd be shocked that that wasn't my first choice. Learning like through force, like you must learn this, like, and I don't know about the way you guys learn maintenance, but the way that I learn maintenance is like if you don't know your wrench sizes or whatever tool that they wanted you to get, they like us junior guys, they will call us like gophers, and you're like, oh, like what's a gopher? Like an animal? No, it's a go for this, go for that tool, right? And if you didn't know your tool, you would get a wrench thrown at you. Not physically. I'm not, I'm I'm like
Metaphorically.
yes,
Yeah.
I'm like dramatizing it, but I'm not. It's not metaphoric and it's not physical. I'm just gonna leave it there. But that's the way that I grew up, like learning maintenance. So it wasn't like traditional by any sense. It was just like, hey, you have to learn this, you have to be good at it fast, and that was that. So coming from that and then leaving the military and then coming out, I was just like, hey, what can I do to finish college faster? Because that was my main goal joining the military, is to go to the military, finish college, right? Um, in America and the US, when you do your military service, they give you like the GI Bill, which essentially you do your time and they fund your college after you finish a military service, right? And so I was trying to essentially finish college faster, and I was like, hey, what am I doing already? I already have military training on aircraft. I'm gonna just go use that as credits towards my college career, right? And so I did that, but I wasn't really in love with aviation at that point. I just did it because I wanted to get by and get to school faster. Um, Fast forward like a couple years, I ended up becoming a K through 12 public school teacher. And this is after I had worked in the industry about 10, maybe about like 10 years plus, like a little bit more than that, where I was bouncing around from like commercial aircraft. I was doing charter operations on Gulfstreams. I was working on like Canadian regional jets, like 200, 700s, right? Like the Embraers. Um, I even got to the point where, well, I was working at SpaceX on their R&D spacecraft Dragon 2 capsule, specifically on the trunk section, where we were like research and developing, putting on solar arrays on the trunk barrel. If you ever see SpaceX capsule, I was on the DM2 project, the spacecraft prior to the astronauts going in the capsule. There was a test one that was DM2 that had like a little globe, like kind of like floating in there. So, anyways, but all this to say that I had done my time in aviation, in aerospace, and I was like, you know what, I am burnt out. And my wife, she's a teacher. She's like, you should try becoming a public school teacher. And so I did that. Um, I fell in love with teaching students with mild to moderate special needs, like learning disabilities. And so when I went to school, that really taught me, and like Fatima, you could probably like attest to this because I know you have some like teaching background, right? But where it's like it's 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 one thing being good at your job and being a good technician. It's a whole different thing teaching it. Like you have to know like your pedagogy, your instructional theories, all that stuff. So that's where I got my formalized training, is when I became a K through 12 public school teacher. And mind you, it was with kids with special learning disabilities. So I was, when you guys learn how to read as like little kids, like you don't remember that far back. Like you probably are like, hey, it just kind of happened. I figured out how to read, right? But in reality, your teachers had to like level you up, right? Using different scaffolds to show you, hey, this is A, this is B, or whatever, or whatever letters of your language of like the language that you have. They had to scaffold you in there. Well, similar to that like mindset, that's how you teach anything, right? Whether it's aircraft maintenance, music, you have to scaffold people. So um, it wasn't until I left um, the aviation field for like, I want to say I was teaching for 3 years. And then my friend was like, hey, you know what? He was a college professor doing automotive. He was like, we have an opening in the aviation department. Do you want to do it? And I was like, absolutely not. I'm like done with aviation. Like I'm like burnt out. I'm tired of working overnight shifts. And yeah, it pays good, but I want more family time. And at the time I was so close-minded. I was just like, um, I'm going to be an aircraft mechanic, but in retrospect, you know, you don't that mechanic technician, we call it like an A&P, you call it your Part 86 certification, could open doors, could open like big doors, like into the field of aviation. You don't have to just stay a mechanic or pilot or air traffic control. There's many careers in aviation. So, I'm trying to remember your like question, Adeeba. What was your initial question again before I go really off topic?
No, absolutely correct. Whatever you have mentioned, this was my question. How did you like was your transition easy? And yeah, so
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So to
because
transition
I
into
know there are a
mhm,
lot of programs in US
mhm,
and there are a lot of scholarships as well, but
mhm,
you have mentioned very interesting points which we have been
yes,
talking about, the economic factor, the burnout, because it was your
mhm,
choice to not choose initially this, but obviously aviation chose you, and ultimately you are in the field.
Yes, but there's many pathways. Like mine just happens to be military, but I tell my students you don't have to do military. You could do different pathways. So anyway, coming back to your question, it wasn't until I came and went out and came back that I saw things from a different perspective. I started going to like, aviation trade show conferences, the bigger picture. I started to see like the bigger like ecosystem of aviation to where I tell this to my military guys. Like when I was in the military, I felt like a sense of camaraderie, a sense of like brotherhood, sisterhood. And it took me a while, but it's also within aviation. Like you could talk to anybody that has worked on airplanes and they tell you like, I worked on MD-80s back in the day or whatever aircraft or Cessna 172s. It's like big and small. Like when you talk to someone that has worked in aviation, you see like a little glow in their eye, like, yeah, I used to do that cool stuff too, or I'm in this section or spacecraft or whatever. So there's a sense of camaraderie because we know how hard aircraft maintenance is. We know how important our job is. Sure, others might not know, and others might think differently of our field, but we know like what we do and how it matters in the bigger like in like the grand scheme of things. So it's just one of those things that it's like um there's different pathways. Luckily for me, it worked out in my pathway. I'm sure you guys have similar pathways as well, like Fatima, like Adiba. I'm sure you guys, either you love aviation. I mean, I'm assuming you love it, but it's everyone's pathway is different, but we're in the same space. We're in the same space.
Yeah, thank you
I
so much,
think we are going
Francisco.
to both, I think me and Adiba, we are both going to agree with this. Either you love aviation or you don't. You
Hmm.
exist or you just don't. There's no in
Hmm.
between in aviation. You
But
can't
but
stay
but
in aviation. You
you
can't
love
survive in
aviation, or
aviation within.
yeah, you love
Hmm.
aviation, yes or yes. This is my side of
Yes or
story.
Yeah,
Yes
yes.
or yes.
There
yeah,
is no chance of a no for you.
Yeah.
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 So with
But
that,
I
let's sorry,
but you know what?
Francesca, I'm going to yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Please
Sorry,
go
go ahead,
ahead, go ahead,
Fatima.
go ahead.
No, but I tell my students like, because I have students that are like, and I know you guys can attest to this. There's people that are in aviation that are like aviation buffs. Like they were born, they like they like eat, like sleep, and like dream like jet fuel. And I'm like, you know what? I was not like that, but I'm like that now. You know, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, you eventually get into it. Yeah, if
Yeah,
Yeah,
like Adiba said, like if aviation chooses you, you're the lucky one or
yeah.
mhm.
the chosen one.
Yeah, yeah.
You would ultimately do that. So I'm going to connect this the next question from what you've just mentioned. So there are different training paths available in America for the younger lot to choose their aviation careers. So we would want you to talk about those as well. So typically for our region, most of the
Mhm.
education is self-sponsored. So a student would get enrolled into a university to complete a degree program and then further on move on to completing their Part 66 modules and get their training experience and then apply for a license. Or
Mhm.
alternatively, they would get enrolled into an organization or an institution, approved or non-approved, pass their modules, take their training, and then get their license. And then based on to their own efforts,
Mhm.
apply for positions or vacancies open in the regional airlines, and then probably get lucky enough to be a part of the EMT workforce. But we do know that the pathway in America is a little different, with the grants available from the government sponsoring students or the institution as well. So could you take us through all of that?
Yeah, you know what? And Fatima, I like that you pointed that out because that's a big distinction with your area versus our area. I love that you guys do it like at the university level, right? And then they kind of like get specialized like in Part 66, right? That's kind of what I'm hearing from you. But in our region, it's actually the second part of it first. Like you would go, like if you wanted to be like an aircraft mechanic technician, you would go to what we call it a FAA Part 147 school, and so that's like your vocational trade school. Okay. There are standalone like for-profit schools that essentially you get your certification and you're a mechanic, right? But they're also built in through some community colleges and even some universities that have their AMP, like program with their college degree and their certification like built into each other, right? They're also on the other end of the spectrum. There's aerospace engineering, aircraft maintenance engineering, um, that don't give you that certification, but give you the engineering aspect of it. And I think I was seeing your last podcast. I think it was like two podcasts ago. We guys discussed there's a distinction between that. How there's like your traditional engineering and I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think either Adeeba or Fatima, you guys went the engineering route first, and then you specialize into your Part C6, right?
So it was basically for me. I did a maintenance
Mm-hmm.
engineering course. I would say it was sort of an internship, sorry, apprenticeship for 3 years. But I
Mm-hmm.
did it in avionics, and ultimately then I
Yeah.
decided to go towards getting a bachelor's degree in engineering. So I did that
Mm-hmm.
transition. But ultimately, then
Yeah.
again, after even doing my master's in aerospace engineering, I did end up teaching and joining the Academia for Aircraft Maintenance Engineering. So I've done that transition. And but we do, like you've rightly said, we do have degree programs now in Pakistan that specialize specifically in the aircraft maintenance engineering domain, which
Mm-hmm.
are coupled with the module examinations. So they help students to get their not only their degrees by the end of 4 years. A typical
Mm-hmm.
graduate undergraduate program in Pakistan is ranged at about 4 years. So at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
program, typically the students are expected to have their degrees and also some modules cleared, or if you're, if you worked hard enough, you would have cleared all of the Part 66 modules, and you should have
Yeah.
been able to, after spending 2 more years gaining your practical experience, be able to apply for the basic license. So yeah, this is what we did discuss in the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, I love that because I'm a proponent of like higher education, like formalized education, and so in the U.S. it's very like there's a culture of like you work with your hands with the trades, or you go to higher academia, or you like study school. It's two distinct things. And so slowly the US and I don't want to like admit this to the whole world or whatever, or it's slowly turning a tide where it's like they're seeing the drawbacks of like having, and I've seen it firsthand, like K through 12, where they were pushing, traditional universities like first before trade skills and vocational skills, as were in the past, like we'll say 1970s, 80s, there was more vocational trades offered in K through 12 education. But since then, like the 90s, there's a whole like atmosphere of this and a whole like logic behind this. But just know that the US has since transitioned from that old model and more pushed traditional university education. And now we're starting to see the drawbacks because of the workforce shortages. So now what I'm seeing is that we have vocational schools, yes. We have like where I work at, like a community college where they typically offer vocational programs, but now traditional higher academia institutions are like offering like vocational courses that go hand in hand. So I'm assuming it's similar to what you guys have in your area, like in your region, where it's like they kind of go together. And the reason why I say that is because I tell my students, and Fatima Ragadiba, like you could attest to this, being an aircraft technician is like borderline being like an aerospace engineer. And I like firmly believe that like if you take it for, obviously there's individuals and there's people that just breeze through the programs, breeze through the curricula, like touch surface level. But if you get deep into this stuff, it's like borderline like engineer stuff. And that's what I tell them. I'm like, hey man, like um you you should go towards that, not only getting your certification or your credential for being a technician, but also go for that traditional degree that goes in line with this.
Totally agree with you, Francisco. And this is what we have been telling to our juniors or fresher technicians
Hmm.
because, you know,
Hmm.
pardon my word, but shortcut, there are no shortcuts. But if you know the system, you know when or how you can use this shortcut or
Yes.
educated shortcut. So,
Hmm.
uh, absolutely agree with your statement. And I would like to ask one thing. So, is leadership or are there any uh, discussions going on to take up this approach? Like you have mentioned, now they are discussing, and they are obviously every region keep on investigating and upgrading their system regarding the industry. So, is there any program going on which is leading them towards the amalgamation of degree and this hands-on apprenticeship, you can say, or is there anything going on currently,
Yeah.
or are there any
Yeah.
programs?
There's a right now in our country, there's a big push that they're actually our like US government is giving like like federal grants through the Federal Aviation Administration to support like schools. I believe how much is I believe don't quote me on this. about like 24 million, roughly more or less, was given nationwide to like schools that either produce pilots or aircraft maintenance workers as like workforce development grants. So essentially, like they get with schools and they tell them, hey, everyone, go throw out your proposal bid to get this federal grant funding that could support your program, whether it's in marketing, whether it's in training equipment, whether it's more like outreach, we call it like bridge dual enrollment like programs where we essentially have like uh, classes offered in the college level and at the high school through like bridge programs to essentially pump up the workforce. So the U.S. government sees the shortage there, and so because of that, they're pumping federal dollars to essentially build out programs to give them what they need. And but going back like go going back on my education, like on getting that master's in education, doing like those like I don't want to say, but having that formalized education to put me in that space because um I tell my students when you just start out in this field, and you have to understand that I get like all kinds of students. Yeah, like I get students fresh from like high school, like secondary school, but I also get like mid-career transition students, as well as like older students that have their own aircraft that like they want to maintain. But I tell them from like day one, and this I know people are gonna think about this as like that's like bad, but I tell them from day one, hey, since when you step foot in my classroom, at this point you are now the subject matter expert. Oh, but we don't know anything. And I'm just like, no, well, yes, you're right. You don't know anything, but that person you see on YouTube or that influencer that's talking about Boeing doesn't know anything either. Right. In fact, you know more than them, or you're gonna know more than them because you're getting a formal education on aircraft maintenance and aviation. So from day one, from the get-go, I tell them like you are now the subject matter expert, whether you like it or not. You like grow through programs like us. We teach you the systems. We teach you how to troubleshoot, how to like analyze systems. You are that person. So whenever you hear discussions about aviation, um, and I don't know about you, like I'm like Adeeba or Fatima, but I often like browse through YouTube, and everybody has their hot take on like what their opinion is on the field of aviation, and and nothing irks me more than someone give their opinion on aviation that has nothing to do with it, but because they have that like influencer or
Mm.
famous persona, all of a sudden they're like the subject matter expert. And I'm like, see that person? They didn't go to school. You're going to school. You're being taught that. So you are that expert. So
Yeah.
that's just my mindset when I teach and when I tell students, hey, yeah, you start as an A&P, or yeah, you being we call them like A&Ps, aircraft and power plant technicians, but you know, that's a great career. It makes like a like good salary. But if you want to strive for higher, you should want to strive for higher, right?
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Francisco.
definitely,
And before,
Adeeba, and I think
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
we are going to agree on to this. I think this is a global phenomenon
Hmm.
where we did I think talk about the same concern of taking an advice of why would you want to join aviation, or how is it that you would want to progress in aviation from somebody who's part
Hmm.
of the aviation industry. Don't just
Yeah.
go to we did talk about it, because we have also seen similar instances around us as well. So there are young learners coming up, and they're trying to choose a career, and they want to, or even if they're like genuinely passionate about becoming an aircraft maintenance engineer, they would just go, and ask anybody around them, how is the full field going to be? Is it a good career? And somebody who's not even had the learning experience of the letter, I would say the alphabet A of aviation, would give them a advice that, such and such is going to happen to you, and so it's not that you should join the aviation career. So I think this is commonly prevalent everywhere, and this is very unfortunate as well. But I think we're going to now move towards our last question with
Hmm.
this. Adeeba, I think we're going to like focus, and we would want to have Francisco add something about the future of how do you see the future of the aviation industry, or specifically the shortages that you see. And the one thing that I could figure out from you, what you've said, is that taking pride in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So for most of the people, the title of being a mechanic, it I don't want to sound wrong, but in our region of the world, the term mechanic is not really highly regarded. So if you're only
Yeah.
called as an engineer, you're respected, and and then people don't actually realize that the terms technician or a mechanic sound and have a different sort of an importance in the aviation industry. So
Mhm.
how important is it that we cultivate that sense of pride, that sense of responsibility into the people who are entering into the, again, people who are going to be fresh into the career, or like you mentioned, somebody mid-career is transitioning into the aviation industry. So how important do you see it is, and also how do you see the future of the aviation industry with the new workforces coming in, and specifically the gap that we are all seeing around the world, that there's a huge population who is moving towards the retirement age, and then we have the younger lot coming in, and the bridging. We do see around us that the bridge is not properly available. The transfer
Mhm.
of knowledge and the transfer of experience probably is going to be a big concern as well. We do have the grants coming in. Probably the money is going to be there, the facilities are going to be there, but what about the human transition of the knowledge?
Yes. Mhm. And you know what's funny is that I was hearing like I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I was hearing like a podcast today on like vocational trades, and they were saying like the job isn't the problem isn't the amount of job openings, is the people to fill those job openings that we need, right? So like you said, Fatima, I think it's pride. Um, but I'll give you all like you like noted how there's like a negative connotation to the word mechanic, right? And that's the same thing in our region too. Like people hear engineer versus mechanic, which one would seem more credible, right? Typically, it's like the word engineer. When when I talk to my students, I give them this example, okay? And this is where the term mechanic actually, or subject matter expert, right, actually makes a difference. I'll never forget the interaction one time that I went to a trade show, right? And you know how there's different aviation companies at like trade shows displaying their project, their project, their product. Are you guys familiar with like Mobile Jet Oil, like the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
We
okay,
are
okay, like the
using.
brand like
Yeah.
Mobile, like Chevron Mobile? I had a guy go up to me and he was like, "Hey, so what do you do at the college?" I'm like, "Oh, I teach aircraft maintenance, like jet engines, so on and so forth." And he was like, "Oh, I work with Mobile. I'm the sales rep for jet oil, right?" And you have to understand that when you're at a trade show, he's not selling like individual cans of jet oil. He's selling like bulk volume to like actual like commercial airliners. Like here's, I don't know, like 1,000 gallons of like jet oil, not of like jet oil, right? So and then he was like, "Do you guys give like classes on turbine engines?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I do. Like I teach people how jet engines work, right?" "Oh, do you guys think you guys could like give our," and I don't want to like mention any company by name, but 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 do you guys think you could give our like sales reps some like classes, right, on like how the basic jet engine operates? And I'm like, wow, like you're in the aviation field, you are a sales rep, and I am going to assume you may or may not have any idea how a jet engine works. And yet you're the one selling jet oil at bulk volume. I'm like, man, like, and I get it, to probably have those sales jobs or any aviation job, you have to meet the minimum requirement, have like your, I don't know, like your bachelor's in business, right?
Mhm.
And while one might seem like more legitimate, more like, hey, this is an engineer or like a college level degree versus a mechanic, I would argue that the mechanic should be the one, or the technician should be the one in that position, because they know exactly how that jet oil operates within that jet engine, right? So that's where I'm like, yes, traditionally mechanic has had a negative connotation like attached to it. But if you actually peel the onion back and you get through the surface level, you would see that that person knows that they are that subject matter expert. So that's where I tell my students, don't just limit yourself. Don't just see tunnel vision. This could be your gateway into like the broader aviation field. So case in point, that example of the jet oil. I won't name that company by name anymore because I don't want any bad publicity on my behalf, right?
No, no, thank you so much, Francisco. And you have given us and all the everyone who is listening the other way around as well, just like you mentioned it, that people who are expert in this area and people who are technical enough to talk about it or to tell you the difference, they have another way to look around on this discussion. Like you look, you have another portal not just the
Mhm.
maintenance, but this is another area where you can explore different opportunities as well. So
Yes.
yeah, it goes both ways.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with any operations that happen in the US. You guys know like UPS, right? UPS.
Yeah.
How we had about like a year, maybe like less than a year ago, we had like a crash happen out of like a like UPS
Yep.
UPS where the jet engine like flipped over, right? And
Yeah.
oh man, we had a great case study in class about this. But I was showing them all the typical YouTuber influencers that like had their opinion on why the jet engine did that. And I'm like, you honestly think that those influencers or those like pundits know the preventative maintenance schedule for that engine? Do you honestly think they know the regulation like that? I'm like, and they're giving your opinions and you guys are trusting them? Like, and keep in mind this is like more like my younger students. And I'm like, no, you guys know how often these inspections happen. You guys know, hey, that engine's been
Yeah.
in like in the air for like the past like 40 years, right? So
Yeah,
it's
we have a
just
term, Francisco. We have an inner joke from our circle. We call it
mhm.
non-technical nonsense. Whenever people are talking up after, yeah, and
Yeah,
we
yeah,
we always end up saying this is non-technical nonsense. So we are not
yeah,
going to listen to anyone or everyone.
yeah,
Thank you so much, Francisco, for mentioning all these wonderful
yeah,
details and sharing insight and perspective from your side as well. And just
but
one last thing from your side, like, is there any message that you would like to give away to all the listeners, young aspirants who are just stepping in the field? And then we will.
yeah. Well, I just want to add Madiba, and like Fatima, that's why shows like yours, podcasts like yours are so important because you guys are actually the subject matter experts talking about this stuff. So, and I know Fatima and Adiba, you guys are working in between shifts to make this podcast happen. So I know I'm the same way. It's stepping out of our comfort zone doing this kind of stuff, right? Because we're in the aviation maintenance field and all that stuff. But it takes people like us to essentially be the reputable people to like go to, right? And we're not saying that we know everything because obviously I don't know everything, right? But I'm sure I know a thing or two more than that quote unquote famous person on TV that might have their opinion, right? So, um, yes, I just wanted to add like that last tidbit. But going back on your last question, Adiba, it was what was your question again? Just to make sure that I answer it right.
Any message, any comment that you would like to share with our listeners and young aspirants?
Yeah, no, I just think is if you're questioning stepping into the field of aviation or aircraft maintenance, I would say don't question it because it could literally be your gateway into like an amazing career in aviation. There's all kinds of careers. There's air traffic controllers, pilots, aircraft mechanics, obviously, flight attendants, schedulers, dispatchers, insurance, HR, sales. Um, there really is no one right way to get into aviation, but once you're in aviation, it's like, man, we have our own language, right? But it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor. And even if you don't, like I told my students, even if you don't, you know, end up being in the field long term, at least you can have that memory when people talk about aviation. You'd be like, hey, back in the day, I learned under Fatima, or I was a technician next to Adiba, or like whatever. Like I've worked on these aircraft in the past, right? So I would say just go for it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
thank you
so
very
much,
much,
Francis.
Francisco, with this. And Adiba, thank you very much from your side as well. We had to align three different time zones for this, and this was really exciting for me. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I think you two would
Yeah,
have enjoyed it too. And this is for all of our listeners as well. Again, everybody, thank you very much for taking your time out. And we will be back with some other feature as well. But for this episode, we had Francisco Gonzalez with us. Do leave us with your comments, and we will get back to them. Again, thank you very much, everyone, and have a very good day ahead.
thank you, Francisco. Thank you. Good day.